Okay, I do have 7 o'clock. Are we all ready to go? Okay. I'd like to call this meeting to order. As far as mayor's remarks, I've got a couple. I couldn't remember for sure whether this was Paula's last meeting or whether she was here for the first meeting in May.
I think she's here for the first meeting in May.
Okay. I still wanted to just share a few comments tonight, if council doesn't mind. And this is one time I don't mind speaking on behalf of council, because I think this sentiment is quite unanimous that we certainly want to wish Paula well in her future endeavors. I stopped in and I talked to Paula, and I explained to her that in my opinion, council has always had the utmost confidence in all the information that she brings to us. We trusted that information, and we were very comfortable with whatever she brought to us, and really appreciated the time that she's worked for here in East. And I really do say this with heartfelt sincerity that really sad to see her go, but really hope that everything works out well for her, and that she is happy and does well in her new job. So Paula, on behalf of all the council, I'd like to say thank you very much for the time that you've been able to give to here in East. We've really appreciated it. I attended the OGRA conference this year. It is actually the first time I've gone to that conference since they had split from Roma. And I always found it a little frustrating when the two conferences were together, because a lot of the sessions you'd go to, I always thought that learning how to pave the 401 was not really helping our municipality or our county that much. But it was interesting, because the very first session when I got there on the Sunday afternoon, there was a 3-hour session put on. It was called Get Your Gravel On. And I thought, well, this is right up our alley. I need to sit in on this. Well, unfortunately, it was more of a sales promotion from different companies. And Day Lee had the first part where they were talking about their dust control and how it adds to the life of your roads. And I'm not saying that anything they said wasn't 100% correct. I'm sure that if they're posting facts and figures, they were. But it wasn't as enlightening as I had hoped it would be. But other than that, I'm going to say there were some exceptional sessions that I thought were very beneficial from a political standpoint, not just from a public roads position. There's one that I do want to talk about at a later date. They had a guest speaker that spoke for, I think it was close to an hour and a half. He was an engineer that they brought up from the States, and talked about the different designs that you would do on roads and in communities. And just one quick little tidbit, I'm not going to go into all the stuff, and he had a lot of great information. But he talked about, he said, people don't sometimes realize the benefits of doing things different than you've done before. He said their engineering firm had actually been hired by a number of towns and cities and that, because they had complaints that there was too many accidents and too many problems on Main Street, and they felt the speed was too fast. So they had them come in and they did actual analysis of what was going on. And instead of coming back and a recommendation of slowing the speed, they actually came back with a recommendation of increasing the speed on their Main Street. And although that wasn't what the mayor was hoping for as an end result, they actually did it and found out that it worked better. And they said it's not normally the speed of the traffic that causes a lot of the problems. It's the differential between all the different vehicles. And the problem is that when some people are frustrated because the roads are built to go a lot faster than the speed limit, posted speed limit may be, you'll have some people that do drive the speed limit. Some are driving more according to the conditions of the road and faster speeds. And it's that differential between them that actually caused a lot of problems, where sometimes when they would increase the speed by 5 or 10 miles an hour, it actually reduced the number of accidents that they had, which I thought was quite interesting. But that's just one little tidbit. There was a lot of other information this gentleman brought forward that was very good. And I've had a very short, brief discussion with Barry Mills on some of it, but I think it's worth having the conversation with all of council just to look at going forward. It's not anything you would ever do overnight, but it's certainly something worth looking at. There were some other things that I do plan to bring up to the county tomorrow that are certainly more up their alley and not really for smaller municipality. Monty McNaughton made a statement, and I hope my shorthand was good enough here that I've got this right, but he said that the province has plans of investing another $4 billion, and that by 2025, they want to be capable of having fiber to every home. Now, I really question whether $4 billion is enough to even do that. But the fact that at a public venue like that they made such a statement, I was impressed that they're getting better behind what is certainly needed for all communities. I certainly want to raise that issue with the county tomorrow, because the county has put a lot of tax dollars, property tax dollars, into increasing fiber to as many properties as possible in Huron County over the next few years. And if the province is going to put that kind of money in, maybe we don't have to spend all the taxpayers' dollars in Huron County to do that. I don't think there's much else that I want to address on that part tonight. So at this point, we would like to acknowledge that the land we stand upon today is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Neutral peoples. And I get a mover and a seconder for the agenda, please. Moved by Deputy Mayor, second by Councillor Morrison, that the agenda for the regular meeting of council dated April 19, 2022 be adopted as circulated. All those in favor? And motion carries. Thank you. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest? And before anybody responds, Councillor Fisher, thank you very much for putting your hand up. I did receive a text that it had forgot to be put into the agenda minutes, but Councillor or Deputy Mayor Fisher is declaring a conflict for the splash pad this evening because he sits on the Lions Club. Is there anybody else that needs to declare anything at this time?
I have a conflict.
Oh, Larry?
Yeah, I have a conflict in the counts.
Okay, thank you very much for pointing that out. Can I get a mover and a seconder for the minutes, please? Moved by Councillor Steffler, second by Councillor McClellan, that the Council of the Municipality of Huron East approve the following council meeting minutes as printed and circulated. That's the regular meeting of April 5th of 2022 and the public meeting of April 5th of 2022. Any comments or questions on those minutes? All those in favor? And motion carries. Thank you. Public meetings, hearings, and delegations, and 6.1 delegation for the splash pad committee, re the water storage tank requirement. So I'm not sure who is making that presentation at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Dean Wood here, along with a couple other people in our facility here. So everyone's here has joined us. So we have Luke Chamat from Progressive Turf. We have Kathy Elliott from the Lions Club, as well as Brian Vincent from the Lions Club as well. We've convened here at the Sun North Systems boardroom to do this presentation to the council. So thank you very much for having us. If you don't mind, I'm going to share my screen. Is that okay?
Yep.
Bear with me while I figure out how to do that. Share the screen. This one right here. Put that to full screen. Just confirm you can see that screen now. It should say the C4 Splash Pad Initiative.
Yes, it does.
Perfect. You guys can hear us okay?
Yep.
Wonderful. So once again, thank you, Mr. Mayor and councilors, for having us. We're here tonight to talk to you about our progress to date on the splash pad, as well as a couple of concerns that we've come across while we're doing our homework on this. So Just to bring you all up to speed, again, this was brought on by a couple of manufacturers in town, Sun North Systems and North Systems, as well as Progressive Turf, and we joined up with the Lions Club to be able to bring the residents of here in East with a splash pad to be able to enjoy. Along the way, we've accomplished a few things. We've overcome a few obstacles, and we've able to attract pledges before we've even started our fundraising of over $165,000 towards our goal. Tonight, we're here to talk to you about a couple of things. The first being the obstacle that we have in front of us, which is a holding tank to capture the water that comes off of the splash pad. So at our last delegation, it was indicated to us that council wanted to proceed to recapture as much of that water as possible for reuse within the community. During our time speaking with splash pad providers, we've identified a few obstacles in doing so. So we're here tonight to talk to you about those. The first and foremost was the location of the tank. So both splash pad providers we spoke to indicated that the tank would need to be located between the splash pad, which, as you can imagine, is on the east end of the swimming pool, and in between where it would discharge into the creek. That presented two challenges. One, the site itself does have a significant amount of bedrock that we really don't know too much about. The town was able to identify some of those bedrocks while bringing water lines to the park, but we really don't know what lies between the splash pad and a direct line of sight to the creek where the water would discharge. The other problem that would present is accessibility to access the water for anybody to be able to use it. Obviously, with the location of the driveway and then where the parking lot adds, the location between the splash pad and the creek is no longer accessible. So that brought up one option, which would be to relocate the tank closer to the parking lot or closer to the pavilion, which or even the driveway for any of the vehicles or individuals looking to access that water. Discussing that issue with the splash pad, they had told us that basically they would require a 1% slope from the splash pad to the holding tank's location, wherever that would deem to be fit, and then an additional 1% grade going down from the new location all the way down to the creek. That got us into a whole mess load of issues, considering the depth of where we got to discharge the water back into the creek, because the creek is really not that deep. And we also, again, run into the same situation with the bedrock and where that grade would actually come into play, let alone any future maintenance and blockages that we would need to do inside that drain from the splash pad to the holding tank and then back to the creek. So that brought up another question, which was how big of a tank do we need to put in the ground? And we had talked to Brad McRoberts about this as well, about trying to identify what size of tank. And both splash pad providers were kind of all over the board on different sizes. Realistically, they indicated to us, what's going to be the purpose of the water and where are we going to reuse the water? Because once we know who's using it, how much they're going to use, that's a great indication of how big of a tank we need to actually put inside the ground itself. So we had kind of identified, and I believe it was in a council delegation as well, that councilors had indicated use for watering flowers, as well as maybe a potential fire department use. So we started asking questions. Okay, this is a large investment for us. How can we be assured that it's going to be accessible, it's going to be used, and that our financial investment is being used to its best capabilities? So we started pulling up the numbers. So Luke and I, being business people in town, we work with numbers. So very first thing we asked was, okay, let's take an average size of tank, which is 4,000 gallons, which worked out to just over 15 cubic meters of water. We knew what the cost of water was at $1.69 a cubic meter. So that tells us that a 4,000 gallon tank can hold approximately $25.50 worth of water. So we asked the splash pad providers as to how much that tank would cost us to put inside the ground, but we received estimates from anywhere from $10,000 to $12,000. So assuming the tank is emptied every other day over a 70-day season, over 13 years, that would give us the tank being emptied 469 times, which would equate to our payback of original investment of $12,000. That does not include the maintenance on that pump, on that actual bolt or the tank. It doesn't include the pump and any operation costs. It doesn't include any winterizing costs. It doesn't include any sludge removal, which the splash pad providers have both indicated it should be done once every other year. So from a financial standpoint, we're looking at a return on investment or a payback period of over 13 years for a $12,000 investment tank. Now, we also understand that there's not just financial implications in this, but there's also environmental impacts and also the visibility in the community that we're just simply wasting water. But we need to understand that we're not just wasting the water. The water itself is going to be used. I mean, the water is, it's very important to understand that, you know, we're taking the water, we're consuming the water. Any unused water would be going back into a river system that has already been dechlorinated and is perfectly clean. So it's not like we're adding any extra use into the septic system for that water to be, you know, retreated and reused. We're putting it right back into the environment in which we got it from. So understanding that we're not creating a negative effect here. What we're really doing is we're just putting the water back into the creek bed, which is where it could be used for other things as well in terms of the environment. So really what it boils down to here is that we're asking the council to reconsider their original request of us, which was to put a holding tank in the ground. It's not financially feasible. We're really not saving a whole lot of water. And unless we can really define what the water is going to be used for, how it's going to be used and how much it's going to be used, we can't justify the financial investment to be able to do that. When we did our research, we understood that the old wading pool down there was being filled and emptied once in the morning and once in the day and once in the afternoon over the last few years, which is almost equivalent to what we're going to be consuming anyways. So what we're asking the municipality and the council to consider is that we remove the requirement for that water storage tank, and that council or the municipality investigate other alternatives to be able to recapture the water, A, at a location for where it's going to be used to save the infrastructure from driving back and forth into a park place, and B, for the people that are actually using the water. So if it's the arena staff that's filling the water, filling the water for the plants to be used, why don't we look at collecting the water off of an eaves trough at the arena, or, you know, collecting the water at the fire hall where they're going to be able to reuse that water. So that's really what we're aiming for tonight. Did you guys have anything else to add before I continue on here? No? Okay. So the second obstacle that we have here, and we understand that this is not an easy request to make, but we're really asking council to consider this tonight. So there's two obstacles we're asking, and I'll recap these at the end, just so we're all clear on what we're asking you for. Really what we're looking at is the potential operating cost of the splash pad. Luke and I as business owners, Brian and Kathy as operators of the park. So everyone in this meeting is well aware that the Seaforth Community Trust made a pledge of over $10,000 a year over the next 10 years towards the operation of the splash pad. So now that we've identified who our splash pad provider is, what type of features we have, and all of those other details, we have a general idea of what our operational costs are going to be, and they're identified on the screen here in front of you. So the estimated annual opening and closing cost is about $2,000. For the first year, that's actually included in the purchase cost of the product that we're purchasing as investors, but we're going to have to do that every year from there on afterwards. Based on the current electric rates and where they're forecasted to go, electricity should be anywhere from $1,000 to about $1,500 over the next 10 years. And then obviously we need to include some preventative maintenance features in there. So realistically, we're looking at consuming about $4,700 of that $10,000 in operation cost as pledged by the community trust. So we went out and we found the comparisons of what other parks are consuming. So we know that the Clinton Splash Pad on average consumes 58 cubic meters of water a day. Based on a 70-day season, that's just over 4,000 cubic meters of water. At $1.69 a cubic meter, we're looking at almost $7,000 in water operational costs. From a Lions Club that's not financially full of money, this is a rather large investment. So Luke and I are looking at this going, okay, how can we make this work for the Lions Club? Because the last thing we want to do is make this investment and bring this splash pad to life, for have the community jump on board, but then have the Lions Club having to deal with a whole heap load of troubles moving forward. We're not looking at using this water for profit purposes. We're looking at giving this water to the people of our community to be able to use it. What we feel is that council is putting a long-term financial strain on the Lions Club, that if and when that community trust donation runs out, it's just not sustainable for the club itself, and the Lions Park's not going to be able to be operated by a Lions Club. What we're saying is, as ratepayers, as voters, and as business operators, we're looking for investment from our council, not constraints. We're looking for you folks to be able to reconsider your requirement and be able to donate that water to the splash pad annually. And we simply take the unused funds from the Seaforth Community Trust and give it back to the trust so that they can use it elsewhere inside the community. So just to recap is what we're bringing over $350,000 in capital, half of which, has already been pledged before we've even started asking people for financial donations. The Lions Park is a very big community asset. I don't need to tell you guys that. This is a significant improvement to a park that's getting use, and it's only going to get more use. Luke and I are bringing dedicated community involvement. All the other people that are bringing pledges are also bringing significant investment to see this happen. And we all know this up and down. Every one of you people on this call know that we've been trying to get a splash pad in here for over a decade. The residents and the ratepayers, they want this. There's no questions about that. What we're asking council to bring us is simply operational cost certainty for the Lions Club. We cannot afford to dump this money pit onto anybody. We're giving them money. The trust has stepped up to give them operational costs. We're asking the council to consider giving them the water to be able to do that. So just to recap, we have 2 requests for you folks tonight. One is that the municipality remove the requirement for a water storage tank and possibly investigate an alternative to capture the water for use in a more accessible location. And 2 is that we ask the municipality to reconsider the request, reconsider this situation and provide the water to the splash pad at no cost. And we simply return any unused funds from the community trust back to the community trust for reinvestment. That's all I have for you folks tonight. If you have any questions for us, any 4 of us are more than willing to take any questions you may have. I'll stop sharing my screen now, but if any questions pop up, I'll gladly reshare it.
Okay, thanks, Dean. Appreciate the presentation, and I'm going to speak first, and then I'll go to council, and they can certainly add all of their comments. When I read your presentation, I don't really have any problem with your comments about the holding tank. I'm going to say that the discussion around the council chamber, we like the idea that it appeared to be a green initiative, that we weren't wasting water. We were trying to reuse some of the water that had been put through the system since it had been paid for, to have it cleared and whatever you want to call it, before it gets to the splash pad itself. So we looked at that as an environmental thing, as being responsible. But if the economics just don't make sense, and as you pointed out, putting that water back into the creek is probably not causing any harm. I personally don't have any problem with that argument at all. Where I did still have a little bit of a concern was asking about the municipality now stepping up and supplying the water free of charge, and the $10,000, the funds going back to the trust. It was presented to us when council made their initial motion that it was a package deal, that these were all the players in the game, who had skin in the game, who was doing what. And certainly that was part of, I'm going to say, the thought process, that it wasn't the municipality taking on all of the operations. And over the course of the first 10 years, that the community trust putting that money in, which in my mind is exactly what the community trust was designed to do, was they were putting money that was raised by the town of Seaforth back into things for the town of Seaforth. And I agree that anybody from Huron East, or even outside of Huron East, can come and use the splash pad. But I suspect the majority of the people there every day will be local from town. I'm not saying that you won't have people that will take the time to drive a little farther, but I'm going to say the majority are going to be from town. So at least from my perspective, I don't have a problem with the comments that you're making about the tank. And I don't want to see the project burdened beyond what it already is. And I can live with that part of it, but I do have a concern about the fact that council voted on a package that now we want to change the package. So I will go to the rest of council now to hear comments. Councillor Chartrand.
Yes, thank you. A good presentation, Dean, and you've done your homework and facts. One thing that skipped my mind was the amount of water that we did waste in that kiddie pool, every day, filling it and letting the water go back into the creek. And financially, as you said, it doesn't make sense to spend $12,000 to save $25 a day on water. But one thing that I had brought up at a couple of the meetings was the request, could we recapture some of the splash pad water and redirect it to the main pool, because every day sometimes they have to top off the main pool. And if there was a simple valve that they could just open up and capture, at least capture that water from the splash pad and put it back into the pool, I think would help. And I agree, at this point, I don't see a need to put in the tank. So did you investigate that option of potentially redirecting the water to the main pool?
Yes, sir. Councillor Chartrand, we definitely did that. We did that through both splash pad providers before we settled on our selective splash pad provider. Both of them indicated they wanted nothing to do with directing water from one into the other. So we relied on their expertise and understanding that said, you know, this is not something we want to pursue. They had done that in other applications and found that it simply just did not work. So, you know, as non-splash pad professional individuals, we had to rely on their recommendation that that was not an ideal situation. So we did not pursue that any further.
Okay, thank you.
You're quite welcome.
Councillor Steffler. You're muted, Joe.
How's that?
Good.
Very good presentation, Dean. I agree 100%. As far as giving the money back to the trust, save it and pay for the water.
Any other members of council have any comments at this time?
I have one, Bernie.
Go ahead, Larry.
Just want to know, I know they said they're not in favor of taking water from the pool and regenerating it that way. Just said had a bad experience. But what bad experience did they have with it? Why? Like, what is the reason? Like, I'm a little curious because to me, if you're pulling water, if you're pumping water through a system and you got a reservoir the size of the pool beside, it's already treated to start with, comes back, gets filtered through the pool. I just want to know what, I mean, they can say, yeah, we don't like that, but I would just like to know why they don't like that.
No, and that's a good question, Councilor McGrath. So the indication that we received from them was essentially finger pointing, and we see this on, personally, Luke and I see this on the manufacturing side of things. We're in construction projects, and you know, it's quite easy for independent operators to point the finger at other operators. So should an issue arise on the splash pad side of things, basically, you know, they didn't want to be responsible for any issues on the pool side of things, and vice versa, from the pool back to the splash pad. We see it constantly from our business side of things, where so Bayfield would be a good example of this, where the splash pad provider provided materials, in-kind donations were done for the installation aspect of it, and then money flew through another avenue. And at the end of it, when something didn't work, all three parties were left pointing the finger at the other one, and who was left on the hook but the town of Blue Water to be able to resolve this issue. So from what we were told, and again, that's all we can go on, both splash pad providers said you're taking two systems and you're trying to integrate them into one, and it's just going to simply create chaos between those two systems. Whether that's right or wrong or not, Mr. McGrath, I can't say, but that's what we were told. You would know much better than that, than anybody sitting at this table.
If I can
Well,
add
it's Larry,
to that,
not,
if I can
well,
add
it's
to
Larry,
that
not,
too, is the health unit comes in and they're very quick to scrutinize these pools much more than they have in the past. So bringing water from the splash pad back to the pool would be a possible issue with the health unit as well.
Go ahead, Larry.
I don't know. Basically, the Lions Club's gonna own both. I understand it, because that's the way it goes. The Lions Club will own the splash pad and the pool at this point. So I don't know who you're going to point the finger at. I guess my concern is they're not giving us a mechanical reason why. Like, you know, a bit of it there came out there a minute ago, like you can put contaminated water back in the pool, but for the most part, it's being ran through the filter constantly and chlorinated. So, but that's my opinion. I think it's a total waste of money to send that kind of money out down the drain. But if they can't give me a mechanical reason why they're not doing it, other than somebody's going to point the finger at the next person because this broke or that broke, well, the person who's going to be pointing the finger will be the Lions Club pointing the finger at the Lions Club. That's my only comment. Thanks.
Any other comments from council at this time? Okay, at this point, I think all we are doing is accepting the presentation. And can I get a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Chartrand, second by Councillor On. That the Council of the Municipality of Huron East approve the request from the Splash Pad Committee to remove the water storage tank requirement, and that the municipality provide the splash pad with water at no cost, and the Seaforth Lions Park returns all the unused $10,000 annual pledge back to the trust for reinvestment in the community. Now, I'm the only person, well, I guess Joe actually also commented about the fact that let them have the $10,000 and pay for the water and save the rest of their money at this point. Councillor Dalton, you had a comment?
I was just going to agree with what you had said. We kind of understood that the 10,000 was going to be offered up by the trust. And I just wondered what changed that. That was our original proposal, that they were going to do that. So I just wondered why they were no longer going to support that for the 10 years.
Okay, and Councillor Steffler.
Yes, I made the motion at the trust and there was no strings attached. It's $10,000 and it's still, as far as I'm concerned, will be $10,000.
Okay, so I'm going to have to ask the clerk, would this be a friendly amendment? Because I do have a mover and a seconder to keep the first part of the motion where we do not require the storage tank, but we remove the second part with the $10,000 annual pledge.
You
that
could
be
make that as an amendment, Mayor McCullen. It would be up to Councillor Chartrand did move it and it was seconded by Councillor On. So if they were in agreement with that, then you could remove that second clause of the motion.
Okay, Councillor Chartrand, are you okay with that?
I am.
Okay, and Councillor On. Okay, so at this point, then the motion does read that we do remove the requirement of the storage tank, but we will not be making any comment on the $10,000 and leave that as was originally passed by council. Any other comments or questions at this time? All those in favor? And motion carries. Thank you. Dean, and to the group you've got there, thank you very much for your presentation. I'm going to say this is a win-win because not everybody got what they wanted, but you are definitely closer than when you presented, and I think it was a good presentation and it made a lot of sense, specifically about the tank. And thank you for also what you're doing. The town will certainly appreciate the amenity that you're bringing to the park.
Thank you very much for having us.
We are down to 6.2 engineers report for the 14th concession municipal drain. Can I get a mover and a seconder, and then we'll bring the engineer in. Moved by Councillor Wilby, second by Councillor Deal. And who is doing the presentation here?
That
Sorry.
would be Trevor Kipfer from RJ Burnside.
Okay. All right. Welcome, Trevor.
Perfect. Yep. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. Hopefully you guys can all hear me okay.
Yep.
I am going to share my screen as well here, just to kind of guide things along here. Okay, so hopefully you can see this just general map. Yeah, so like you said, my name is Trevor Kipfer. I'm an engineer with RJ Burnside and Associates. Oh, and did I just lose my screen, or are you guys still seeing?
I never saw your screen come up as of yet.
Okay, let's try it once more. Okay, there we go. I think that should be better now.
Yep, there we go.
So just to give a quick summary for this project. So the 14th concession municipal drain is a large channel system about 12 kilometers in length and serves as an outlet for numerous municipal drain systems throughout the municipality of Huron East, particularly in the Gray Ward. The portion of the 14th concession drain that is impacted by the work that we're involved on is highlighted in this map here. So the drain goes from east to west, generally following adjacent to, so St. Michael's Road is running kind of right to left on this page, kind of where my cursor is here. And then Livingston line is running north-south, kind of where my cursor is here, and we're just to the east of County Road 19. So yeah, the drain itself, are the portion that we're interested in with our works, services about 730 acres of land. So the purpose of our involvement in doing work on this drain was to address a request for improvement submitted by Joe Terpstra to determine a solution to improve outlet for lands within the watershed. We initially had an on-site meeting in May of 2021 and had a follow-up information meeting in July of 2021 for the project. For this particular project, we actually had a subsequent information meeting in November of 2021. And this was specifically to address our assessment logic on the project and give some additional explanation to some of the property owners involved. All the meetings were well attended by representatives within the watershed. I think we pretty well had representatives from almost every property at least one of those meetings. So in addition for this project, we've actually, in addition to the engineer's report, we've mailed out some detailed assessment calculation to the property owners. And we've provided this to help address any questions that any of the owners may have. And also for them to be used as supporting documentation at the quarter revision, where any appeals on costs should be dealt with for this particular project. So following the meeting, just a summary of the work we're proposing. So we're proposing about 1,600 meters of channel deepening. Again, this is, I guess I didn't mention it before, but this dark line here, again, following my cursor, is generally where work is being proposed. So in that dark line, we have about 1,600 meters of channel deepening, about 500 meters of channel deepening and widening, so a little bit more substantial channel works there. We're proposing to improve 3 road crossings and 3 laneway crossings. And we've also proposed some clearing and brushing along the drain itself. As far as cost estimates go for the project, our total construction cost estimate we have is approximately $236,000. Property owner allowances, we have $36,000. Total engineering fees, we've estimated approximately $88,000, and other costs such as net HST, permitting fees, interest, and so on, we've estimated around $35,000 for a total project cost of $395,000. How that is distributed, we've assessed approximately $277,000 of that to private lands and the remaining $118,000 to municipal lands for the project. And we're anticipating about $92,000 in Omafra grant to help offset the assessments to any of the agricultural lands. And yeah, that's my summary. Thank you for listening, and Mr. Mayor, I guess you can take it from here. Thank you.
Are there any questions of members of council at this time on for Trevor? Councillor McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Trevor, I have a couple questions. On page 1 of your report, you mention about surface ponding currently takes place following storm events. But I think you have to agree that you could dig the ditch as deep as you want to, and it's still not going to help the surface ponding in fields. It's systematic tiling that will fix that, not your ditch, no matter how deep you dig it or how wide you make it. Correct?
And yeah, if I may, Mr. Mayor, through you, I think that's a fair comment from Councillor McClellan. However, I know in our investigation, when we had completed the survey on this particular drain, there are certainly aspects of the ditch that are, not ideal by typical drainage standards. There's just kind of grades in general within the channel itself that aren't what we typically be striving for. And of course, you need your good outlet for your systematic tile drainage to function as well as it can, I guess, would be my response there. but you're 100% right. That systematic tile, it will take time to drain the lands as well. So.
And just a follow-up question to that, and like I sort of question why the drain really needed cleaned out. I kept an eye on this drain over the winter time because Councillor Deal and myself attended that last meeting at the Gray Fire Hall. So I kept an eye on it, and a couple different times during the winter time. One was December the 11th, and everybody remember that. That's when the power went out around here. We had snow, we had rain that day, we had a lot of moisture. That drain was full top of bank. Within 24 hours, it was right back to normal again. So it was. So like I'd like to push back on that drain not working. It was working. Another time was May 5th and 6th. Same thing. Bank was running full, top of bank and over. The following day, less than 24 hours later, it was back down to normal again. So the drain is working. So I think it all sort of boils back to it's like a murder mystery, and we're starting at chapter 14 of 15 chapters. We need to go back to chapter 1 and see why we need to clean this out. And it goes back to that farm, lot 32 and 33 of concession 14. They just recently had an open drain that was buried with a closed tile. And when that tile was put in, I believe it was put in too low. So in a sense, they've created their own problem. And that's why they initiated this, what was it, section 47 of the Drainage Act.
Go ahead, Trevor.
Yeah, it would have been it was a section 78 request for improvement. And I guess I'll let you finish your thought there, Councillor McClellan, if you had.
Thank you. Yeah, so it seems like a lot of the issues with this drain started there. Mm-hmm. In my mind, it's sort of been done backwards. Mr. Terpster had given me some papers there during the wintertime where the Williams Drainage said they had to bury it deeper to get ample coverage. So take it back one more step farther than that. So was an engineering firm to begin with engineered the drain wrong? That they got the tile in too deep? Like there's a whole bunch of dominoes that have fallen here. I just trying to get to that first domino.
Mm-hmm. And I guess is there a specific question, I guess, that you had there, or something that you'd like me to help clarify with your comments there?
Certainly. Sorry about that. I just was looking to clarify. Does that, am I right about that?
I guess our comment would be, and we mentioned it on page, I don't have the exact page with me. I want to say it's 3 or 4 in the report, but we have looked at those plans that note the enclosure that was done on Mr. Terpster's property. Based on our review of those plans, we found that existing drain was installed at 0.1% gradient. So that's the flattest gradient we typically install municipal tile on. And then we also noted, reviewing those drawings, that the drain itself was approaching 3 feet of cover on it, which is typically what we would strive for as our minimum cover for any tile. And I know with our survey of this particular project, if you look at the outlet of the drain itself, it is partially buried. It doesn't have a free. Typically in tile drainage, you like to see that freeboard, so the pipe dumping down into the channel. And I know the elevation of the channels, when we had surveyed it, they are actually above that tile. So kind of based on all of those points, I guess we'd still felt that just reviewing that there wasn't anything that jumped out at us as being, they had installed it too low or anything like that. So.
My final comment at the top of, you've discussed top of page 3. We got that out of the way. Just overall, when you look at the drain and how you propose to clean it out, looks like it's the banks are going to be pretty steep. Mm-hmm. I think in your original drawings that you had, I think you were trying to make the drain a little bit wider, mm-hmm. Because it's going so deep. But then in your final drawing, you've just basically went deeper. does that not lead to severe slumping and clean out far more often?
I guess so. As I mentioned in my kind of original presentation, there is a number. There's about 1,600 meters we're proposing deepening only of the drain. There is 500 meters where we're proposing to both deepen and widen the drain. The reason that we are doing some of the widening in those sections is because we want to make sure we have a stable side slope. So in spots where the channel bottom width is too narrow, we can't simply just deepen the drain and then match the top of bank, or else we will get that too steep of banks, like you were saying, which can be problematic. So those sections where we were concerned about that, we've actually proposed to widen the drain as well, so we can establish that stable side slope.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
Any questions from any other member of council? Councillor Chartrand.
Yes, thank you. Trevor, I'm just curious, these Omafra grants that you talked about, does the municipality benefit from any of those Omafra grants? Because every time a drain project comes up and every time you cross the road, our cash register rings at town hall and we're charged, and we can't plan for that kind of a budget every year because we never know who's going to apply for a drain. And yet every drain project, you know, our bill is 100,000, 200,000. So does Omafra help the municipalities out as well instead of the landholders?
Unfortunately, they do not. The grant is only available to properties that have an agricultural tax class. So municipal lands such as roads don't classify under that. So no, unfortunately, none of that grant goes towards the municipal assessments. No.
I don't know. Okay, thank you.
Any other comments from council? Okay, seeing none. It was moved by Councillor Wilby, second by Councillor Deal, that the council of the municipality of Huron East accept the engineer's report on the 14th concession municipal drain 2022 and designate it as bylaw 31 of 2022, and that the quarter revision be set for the May 17th, 2022 at 6 p.m. that Councillors Elva McClellan, Diane Deal, and Larry McGrath be appointed as members with Councillor McClellan acting as chair. All those in favor? And motion carries. Thank you. We are down to accounts payable. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Morrison, second by Councillor On, that the accounts payable in the amount of $3,513,071.63 be approved for payment. Comments or questions on the accounts this evening? Seeing none, all those in favor? And motion carries. Reports and recommendations of municipal officers, and the first one, 8.1, request for proposal, service delivery review. And I turn this over to the CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So at the December 7th meeting, based upon a recommendation from myself, there were a series of items that council supported in terms of action items that included this particular case, completion of a comprehensive service review in 2022. Subsequent to that, we also, or concurrently with that, we had the opportunity to submit for a modernization intake 3 application, and were successful. So we were able to fund the service review through that process. So we actually put out an RFP March 1st. We received 2 submissions, one from KPMG LLP and the second one from Strategy Corp Inc. Both are very competent firms in terms of doing service reviews, organizational reviews. In fact, actually, they submitted as well for our economic development strategic planning process as well. The submissions were evaluated against the prescribed scoring criteria as outlined in the request for proposal, and the proponents were required to achieve a minimum score on their technical proposal before their separate and sealed fee proposal was opened and scored according to a formula-based calculation. So the combined scores are presented in the table in the report. So Strategy Corporation had a technical score of 68.5 with a fee score of 14.3. So they were not the cheapest or the lowest cost, I should say. For a total score of 82.8, KPMG LLP had a technical score of 67. So both were very technically capable on doing a service review, but they had the lowest price, so they got full points on the cost with a total points of 87. So based upon staff's review, which included the finance treasurer, the public works manager, the clerk, and myself, we are recommending that KPMG LLP be awarded the project for $89,964. Happy to answer any questions from council.
Deputy Mayor. You're muted, Bob.
How's
Go
that?
ahead. Yeah, that's good.
My tech supporter went to a meeting, jeepers. To Brad, please, Mr. Mayor. When are they doing this and what all does it involve, please?
Sure. So it'll involve them looking at all the service areas. So public works, the finance department, recreation, building department, CEO's office, clerk's office, all those service areas that the municipality provides, looking at it and comparing it to 4 other comparable municipalities. And we've specified 2 within Huron County, so comparable municipalities, 2 within Huron County and 2 outside of Huron County, just in case we're all drinking the same Kool-Aid. And so that was, so 4 comparators. They'll look at all the different services. They'll look at it from a metric standpoint. So they'll look at it more from an analytical standpoint. They'll conduct consultations with the community in terms of what the community wants in terms of service delivery, if there's anything new, or services for that matter, services that we provide now that we no longer need to provide or should cease providing. Not saying that there would be any, but they'll certainly look for that. And then as part of that too, they'll look at our organizational structure to make sure that we have the proper organizational structure to meet the service delivery requirements. And the goal here is to, first of all, identify whether or not from a service delivery standpoint, there's any opportunities for efficiencies or improved effectiveness. And also to look at it to make sure that we're providing the services that the community wants in the form and fashion and the mediums, I guess is the best word I could come up with, that the community wants. So it's a fairly comprehensive review. It'll have consultations with staff, with council, with the community in terms of what we need to do for service delivery. And the whole concept behind this, and obviously why it was eligible for modernization funding, was to look at our services and make sure that they're current, up to date, we're using the right processes, and find efficiencies. Does that help, Deputy Mayor?
Yep, thank you. And to start immediately or after McSweeney's done?
Oh, sorry, yeah, that's the first part of your question. So yeah, they would start immediately. So they would proceed the process, assuming council awards it tonight. And their goal is to try and deliver the project to council for September, October, I think, timeframes. If council recalls, this was sort of one of the building blocks for that strategic planning process that I presented back in the fall. So the economic development strategic planning process is one block. The asset management plan is another block. The service review is a block. The communication plan is a block. So we're building all these different blocks that we're going to use to eventually get to the point where we've got a comprehensive strategic plan that will include key recommendations from all these different plans, including the service review.
Thank you.
Councillor Chartrand.
Yes, thank you. Brad, I'm assuming this will also include the service of garbage and recycle pickup?
Sorry. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions of council before we call the vote? Okay. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Deputy Mayor, second by Councillor Steffler, that the Council of the Municipality of Huron East award the service delivery review to KPMG LLP. And all those in favor? And motion carries. Thank you. Next, for the CAO, the animal control.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So on animal control, council's aware of the fact that Mr. Trick, who was our animal control officer, passed away last, I believe it was August of last year. And prior to that, I guess there had been established a animal control working group and subsequently became a bit more active trying to find solutions for animal control. Mr. Trick provided animal control for a multiple number of municipalities in Huron County. And I think the first attempt we had was to try and find out if there was anybody else out there, either as a private individual or as a corporation, that was interested in doing that. So we did an expression of interest. We got a little bit of feedback from that, but nobody was what I would put in that category of, walk in the position and be able to take over and do it instantaneously. We felt that there would have to be a significant amount of investment in that person or those individuals or that organization to take on that duty. So the second approach we looked at was whether or not there was a willing municipality in Huron County, or at least a partner municipality that was interested in hosting or a shared service type of agreement for animal control. And I brought that report back to council back in, I believe it was December 7th as well. And this council basically said, yeah, we weren't necessarily, all that willing, but we might consider the idea. And that we would look at a reduced level of animal control service as part of that recommendation. Subsequent to that, I think at that time, we had about 6 potential partner municipalities, and that number dropped off shortly after that recommendation was made and motion was passed. So the working group kind of went back at looking at how to approach this again, because certainly having just a small number of municipalities partner in an employee type based animal control was going to be far too expensive. So we had conversations. There's at least 2 of us so far, potentially 3, that have looked at using our current bylaw enforcement officer to provide the enforcement side of animal control. So that's the ticket issuance for somebody who doesn't have their dog's not licensed and they haven't purchased a license. Aggressive animals, attacking animals, too many animals, too many dogs beyond the bylaw. Those are the pieces that we could at least get the enforcement side, because that's really where you really kind of need a fairly significant amount of training in to be able to issue Provincial Offences Act tickets. So we had conversations with the bylaw enforcement officer, and then what we did is we've been approaching some of the local kennel operators and even going back to some of the original people in the expression interest to see if they would be interested in taking on the other portion of canine control, which is basically capturing the dog and at least delivering it to a pound service or providing pound services. So right now, we're continuing that process, and the recommendation being brought to council is just to continue that recruitment process. But we at least want to appoint our bylaw enforcement officer to take on that enforcement side of the canine control. The other piece, of course, is Bob was also our livestock evaluator, and we'll have to recruit for that position as well. So the recommendation being made at this point in time is that council support staff's recommendation to use the bylaw enforcement officer, and that council support staff recommendation to recruit a canine control officer. And I'm using that word canine control specifically because right now it's called an animal control bylaw, but maybe we want to really just focus it down into being a canine control role as opposed to being a broad animal control. Other animal issues, raccoons, pests, whatever they might be, they can be managed by a private pest control company. They don't need to be managed by the municipality. There's nothing under the Animal Control Act that says that municipalities need to deal with raccoons or nuisance animals. And then the last piece of that was to also recruit for a livestock evaluator. And we're all working together with some the remaining partners in the municipal partners to look for solutions for those canine control officers and the livestock evaluator, and hope to have shared service agreements for whomever we might be able to find as part of those pieces. So that's a bit of an update on animal control. Problem's not solved quite yet, but we're still working on it. At least we got one step of the process in place, if council supports this recommendation.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Chartrand.
Yes, thank you. Brad, can you explain to me what is a livestock evaluator? What is the function of that? And how does that write into our current canine bylaw that we have in place?
Okay, they are separate, so there's nothing to do with a canine or animal control bylaw, but every municipality has to appoint a livestock evaluator. What they do is if on a farm, if livestock are killed by, say, a coyote, that livestock evaluator will go and look at what caused the incident, basically put a price on it, report that to Omafra, and then that gives the opportunity for the farm operator to be able to recover some funds through Omafra for the loss of that livestock.
Okay, thank you. I didn't know what it was, so thanks for clearing that up.
Councillor McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Brad. Brad, so how do you see this operating or moving forward? Say if I have a stray dog that's on my property, what do I do? Do I fill out the report it form? Do I call the office? How does that take place?
Either one would work. So you would report it to the office, and then the office, once we have a canine control officer, would then reach out to that canine control officer to pick up the dog. One thing I have to emphasize, though, is that if you, as the person calling, just say there's a dog running around out there, that's not going to do much good for a canine control officer. We're kind of trying to ask people to try to constrain the dog, because they could show up an hour later and the dog could be 2 miles away, right? So that's kind of how that would work. If it's someone calling up and saying, you know, my neighbor has 3 dogs and is only supposed to have 2, you know, you need to do something about it, that call will get directed to our enforcement officer to help.
Can I add to that? So my original statement, I call you up or call the office up, speak to someone there and say that dog that's running around my property just bit my child.
Okay.
Then what? Like, and obviously, obviously it's a vicious dog, you know, and I'm not going to try cornering it.
Yep.
But it's obviously a threat to the neighborhood.
Correct. So then in that situation, you probably have a combination of both your bylaw enforcement officer going and having a conversation with the property owner, and certainly looking at taking, I won't call it legal action, but offense enforcement operations. And then the canine control officer, a separate person, would then come in and try to capture that dog if necessary, if we couldn't find the owner. Kind of a combination effort.
Okay.
It's all on the assumption that you would know who the owner was, Councilor McClellan.
Yeah. And I mean, there's obviously going to be times when you don't. I had a situation on Saturday where someone dropped in from Ethel. There's a dog down there that has bit somebody, and they said they have called the office, but nobody came or nobody returned their call. So, I mean, I'm just going by what the person said, but I can give you his name and his phone number. He's not accustomed to lying often. So I do believe it did happen. So I guess I'd like to follow that up then. Like, so if there was loose dogs, or if my neighbor had 4 dogs, what would you prefer? How would you see it moving forward? Like actually calling the office, talking to someone, or would you like it done through the report form? My only downfall with the report form is you can fill out the form and send it in, you get the automated return that you've sent it in, but very seldom do you ever get a return phone call saying, yes, Alvin McClellan, we got your report, assigned somebody to look at it. When you never hear anything back, it's frustrating as the devil because you think that nobody is doing anything about it.
So I'll answer your first question. So yes, our enforcement officer has been investigating the dog bite incident in Ethel. So that's been followed up. I'm not aware of anybody else. I've spoke to a couple people that have called me specifically in terms of that incident, and I've spoke to them. So I'm not sure who this other individual would be. In terms of your case where, the reported form is the best way, to be honest with you, because the information gets put in there, all the information we need for the investigation, and it's documented. I guess that's maybe one of the things that maybe our service review can look at and say, do we have some process in there to make sure that there's an acknowledgement or a follow-up on that and sort of closes the loop? I'm not suggesting that everybody's going to get a detailed account of what happened, because some of it becomes enforcement issue and we don't want to disclose the investigation side of things, but at least acknowledge, yep, we got your form. Yep, we've assigned it to the bylaw enforcement officer and whatever the case might be. So that is a flaw in our system and maybe something we need to correct in terms of making sure that there's at least an acknowledgement.
Yes, I think just a person acknowledging your report form. And yes, I don't even want to know all the particulars to do with what's taking place from there. I just like the reassurance that somebody has actually took the time to read the form and going to try to look into it. And either it's, no, we know what you're talking about, we're going to go look after it. I don't care who you're going to send out. I just want to know if somebody is going, that's all.
Yes, certainly, and it can escalate too. So certainly in the case of the circumstances in Ethel, I mean, we had a series of agencies involved. The health unit was involved, the OPP was involved, our enforcement officer was involved. Yeah. So I mean, there's quite a number of people that have been on that circumstance.
Okay, thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One to you and one to Brad, please. To Brad, this whole procedure, will it be cost neutral for Huron East? Like the fines or charges will cover the cost of having the canine person and Mr. Brocklebank go out?
Yeah, so from an enforcement standpoint, well, certainly from a dog tag standpoint, we gain revenue, and that revenue is meant for us to it's meant to offset our animal control, or our canine control, I should say, efforts, and it has to date no problems. So I don't see this new structure having any significant change in that cost formula.
You have two people instead of one.
Yeah, but your canine control officer is going to be paid by that person. So if I have to go out and capture your dog and I have to pound it, you're paying for my time, you're paying for the pound service.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know. Okay, yep.
Yeah, so there's other charges that we have that will be incorporated into that.
Okay. And Mr. Mayor, is there any has there ever been any thought at county of having a county person do the livestock?
It's been raised about the fact that it would be great if you had one person, because then you're also getting consistent pricing throughout the entire county, and it's not just this person. But I'm going to say, anytime that someone has had that responsibility, I think they're well trained, and they know the market and do a good job. I've certainly had Bob tell me lots of different stories where, the farmer tried real hard to convince him that it was worth a heck of a lot more than he was certainly valuing the animal at. But I don't recall that there was ever any desire, but it had come up, I'm going to say maybe about a decade ago, when there were a lot more coyote attacks at that time, or there appeared to be at that time. There was some discussion, but I think everybody felt that they kind of had it handled.
but at your CAO meetings, Brad, is there any discussion at all about sharing somebody with 5 or 6 communities just for the livestock?
There was originally conversations about it as part of this whole animal control, but most of the municipalities through the course of the last 6 months have found their own solutions for each of these things. So there's about 3 or 4 of us that are still looking to try and retain a livestock evaluator, and we're all fairly located. So it's Central Huron, Morris Turnberry ourselves, and maybe potentially North Huron. So they're all kind of in the same general district. So somebody central to that would be interested in a livestock evaluator would be a perfect candidate.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Chartrand.
Yeah, I was just going to share, and Brad kind of touched on it. I was involved with 3 different cases with Mr. Trick of a mad dog, I'll call it, one with a family member, and the OPP definitely were involved, and public health was involved as well. And I know the OPP actually was driving around the area looking for the dog. So depending on the severity of the situation, the OPP can also be a part of the solution as well.
Yes, and they have been in the past.
Councillor Morrison, you had your hand up.
Through you to Brad, are there any stats regarding how many annual calls currently go into bylaw and how many annual calls currently related to animal control back when we did have Mr. Trick services?
I wouldn't say there were any what I would call statistics maintained. So certainly some records in terms of the call, and that would probably just be Mr. Trick's invoices coming in, saying, you know, what responses he's made. Other than that, that's probably as far as it went. I can say this much in the, what has it been, 8 months since I've been here, 9 months. You know, we've had a few circumstances where we've had either aggressive dogs, dogs at large, for the most part, or stray dogs being found. But a lot of the stray dogs are being found just by people putting Facebook notices up, and people are finding out who they own. In fact, some of our own employees actually have been able to help find homes or find the owners of various dogs. So it's not like it's not a what I would call a frequent flyer type challenge. It's mostly just the odd circumstances that get out of hand.
Thanks.
Councillor McClellan.
Thank you. Just one more question through you again to Brad. Brad, since this new animal control officer isn't going to be dealing with, I'm just going to say raccoons or that type of issue, do we have or can we develop a list for if somebody calls in and says, Brad, hey, I've got a raccoon up my tree here, you know, can I get someone to come take it down? And at that point you say, well, no, we don't do that. It would be nice to be able to have either a list to say, well, look, I got 3 or 4 phone numbers here. Give these people a call. That's the type of thing they look after. I just wondering if either A, you do have a list like that, or B, if we could develop one just to help people out in a case like that. That's all. Thank you.
2 challenges with that. Usually what I typically, and this is what I've been telling people, is that if you simply Google pest control, you'll find multiple pest control companies within our region. And that's ideally what I would recommend people do, because if I generate a list and it's got 4 people on there, we could put ourselves at liability if they call one of those people and one of those people do something that causes a problem. So we're generally try not to put lists of vendors out there. Same thing if someone called me up and said, can you recommend a plumber? You know, they'll just, we wouldn't recommend a plumber. We would simply say, you know, go out there, talk to people. You can find out, you can call to a local hardware store and find out who they would recommend, but we typically don't make recommendations. But we certainly can point them in terms of where you can find the information in terms of who could do it. That's just a bit of a low risk, risk aversion type answer for you, Councillor McCollum.
Any other questions for council? Okay, can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Morrison, second by Councillor On, that Council of the Municipality of Huron East supports staff recommendation to use the bylaw enforcement officer for canine bylaw enforcement, and that council supports staff's recommendation to recruit a canine control officer or officers to fulfill the services of catching canines and impounding canines, and further that council supports staff's recommendation to recruit a livestock evaluator. Any final comments or questions? All those in favor? And motion carries. Thank you. And 8.3, supplemental review of committee of council.
So yes, based upon council's recommendation, last council meeting was to some members of council wanted a bit more time to review the recommendations I provided in a report on April 5th. Those councillors did provide comments to me. I've incorporated those comments in my analysis here. So I did incorporate a couple of recommendations. I think one of the recommendations was to ensure that, or one of the comments was to ensure that there were representatives, public representatives from each of the existing wards where the facilities are located. So I did amend that to include the 4 public members, 3 from each of the wards where the center is located and 1 at large. And then there was also a comment made in terms of the composition of the Economic Development Committee to have 3 council members and 4 business members, including the chair of the BIA, the Brussels Business Group, 1 person, 1 Huron East manufacturer, and 1 Huron East business owner at large. So those were the changes to the recommendations that I incorporated. And now I'll go through a little bit of the background in terms of some of the information. So council comments, there were a few comments. I think that people were suggesting that the administration and personnel committee, and that came up at the last council meeting, should be combined. I also heard from members of the commenters as well that it should not be combined. And I think it really doesn't matter whether you combine the personnel, the administration committee. They don't meet on a prescribed frequency. They meet for different reasons. They meet as required, save and except that the personnel committee should meet at least once a year to set the cost of living increases for the staff salary grids. Beyond that, those committees don't have a preset agendas or preset frequency. So I guess the point I'm trying to make is you can combine them if you want, but you're not going to save any money. It's not a cost saving measure. And I believe that the council members, the diversity of the council members that you got on each of the 2 separate committees provides good value in terms of being able to provide sort of a cross section and some expertise in terms of each of the 2 different areas. So staff recommendation would still be keep the 2 committees as they are, and there's no change there, and there's really no cost savings or impact either way. There were a couple comments on well, I think there was a couple other comments I should probably just highlight. I think there were some interest that that those committee numbers be, no, it's the next one, sorry. So it's the Water Sewer Committee. So in the Water Sewer Committee, there was a suggestion that maybe there should be each of the wards should have representatives on the Water Sewer Committee. And I understand that, that's just trying to give a full cross section of Huron East, but the Water and Sewer Committee was set up purposely to provide representation from each of the wards where we have water or sewer systems. And so that's your Seaforth, Brussels, Chuckersmith, Finastra area. And so I think that committee still has its purpose and should still exist. And I don't think that we want to increase the numbers. We have to be careful in the compositions of these committees that they're not greater than 5 in terms of council, because then that forms a majority of council. And then you've got essentially quorum and they become fairly much decision-making bodies. And it's a way of roundabout of circulating or bypassing council, which we don't want to do. So that's those 2 committees. In terms of the Huron East Recreation Committee, I had 5 commenters. 3 of the commenters supported the recommendation to have 1 Huron East Central Recreation Committee, and I had 2 commenters that suggested that Vanessa Recreation Center Management Committee should remain separate from the Huron East Wide one. And the only comments I would offer is that staff still strongly recommends that we have the Huron East Wide under one umbrella, so that we can have continuity, collaboration, effective communication, creation of new and complementary recreation programs. And I don't disagree that certain aspects of the Rufinasta Recreation Center are not the same as the other two, but the point is that we're trying to find that unified approach to recreation across Huron East and make sure that Huron East as a whole knows that those facilities are open and available to them. And there might be some really good opportunities for complementary complementary is the right word, programs to exist between them, or cooperative programs, I guess is another choice of a word. And that's not really happening right now, but I think if we had that here in East Wide Committee, it would do that very well. I think it was mentioned at the last meeting. I don't know which councillor mentioned it, but when you have tournaments at either one of those recreation facilities, there's always an opportunity to be able to expand recreation programs. And the other piece I think I want to offer here is that the whole purpose of creating this recreation committee is not to manage the existing facilities, by no means at all. That's sort of what I'm trying to get away from. It's to start highlighting what type of recreation programs we got out there, whether they're public or private. So it could be someone teaching karate, could be someone teaching quilting, it could be someone teaching needlework. Doesn't really matter. The whole point is to get those things and get an awareness of them and promote them on a Huron East wide basis. So when I talk about recreations, it's not sports types of recreation necessarily, it's recreation as a holistic side of things. And actually this morning I spent some time with a Huron County group reviewing some feedback from Roger Brooks. And if some of you probably have heard of Roger Brooks, he does reviews of small towns throughout North America for that matter. And one of his big comments was why people are looking for communities to live in is they're looking for communities that have recreation activities. They want to have, and whether it's passive or active recreation, those are the key pieces of what people look for in the communities they want to live in and move into. So I think it's important that we start placing recreation programs as a fairly high priority in terms of our municipality so that we can attract investors and continue to see growth in the way that we've seen already. So that's where we are on that one. Let's see. Economic Development Committee, there was a good suggestion. But one of the commenters to just incorporate some key business people. Now, subject, of course, to those key business groups being able to bring forward someone to sit in that committee, but it does make sense, and it's a slight modification to my original recommendation. But we do want to see some more public participation on the Economic Development Committee and less of a council presence per se. Not that council's got the wrong idea, it's just we need to engage the public and the business community in terms of what our Economic Development Committee will do. And then there was a comment from one of the councillors with respect to the Huron, we should have a council representative on the Huron Family Health Team Board. And that's not a board of this council, but certainly I can certainly reach out to the Family Health Team to see if there's any opportunity to have council representation on there. And then one of the comments was, excuse me, that if there is no fire board, then the fire chief, or I would say probably his representative, would report to both the Huron East, West Perth, and Morris Turnberry councils semi-annually with detailed reports. And that was always the intention of the recommendation, that those incident reports that each of the district chiefs provide to the boards right now would not just be provided to the respective councils. And then there was a comment about the community service manager, and that wasn't part of my recommendation at this time. I think at this point we'll just park that concept. I just wanted to tie it in so council would understand where this was coming from. But that could or will likely be part of the service the legal review process and subsequent discussion by council. Happy to answer any questions, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Councillor Chartrand.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, to you, Brad. I'm okay with the entire report, except I'm still hung up on recreation. I still believe that we need to keep the Vanastra committee separate. Being involved with that committee for a long time now, it's so community oriented, business oriented, where, like, for example, Fleming Mills would give $10,000 for the parking lot pavement, that type of stuff. It's a very close-knit community. I still feel you can accomplish your goals of this Uranus wide committee by simply inviting the committee, the manager from Vanastra, Lisa, to sit on the new Uranus wide committee so she can share and collaborate ideas, which is your main goal of that. And I see it working out both ways. Keep the little knit community of Vanastra going as it has been going, and utilize and pick the brain of the Vanastra manager at your Uranus wide meeting. I see it's a win-win both ways, doing it that way.
If I can just do a quick response, Ray. I do not begrudge your comments at all about the support you get from the community. Although I'm going to say that Brussels, in my opinion, can challenge any community in the province. I have every year been so impressed with when they do their fall fair and the way that entire village seems to come together to put together all the different things. And even when the few times that I've sat in on their rec board meetings, and I realize over the years, we've certainly had some hiccups there, but the involvement and the programs and the things that they put together that you just never hear of anywhere else. And I still think the idea of having one committee so that everybody is sharing all their information has more potential to do good than any harm it could ever do. And I still fall back to the fact that if we make this change, there is absolutely nothing stopping council in the future of changing it back if in fact something doesn't work. And, you know, whether it be in Brussels or even in Vanastra, we've had comments from the public asking how come we didn't have a rec director for the municipality. And I think this is an opportunity to address that concern. Whether it's right or wrong, we will find out once we try and do it, if in fact council decides to try and do it. Councillor Steffler.
I certainly agree with you, Mr. Mayor. There's no tighter knit community than the village of Brussels. It has been something like that for all the years that I've known it. And all we gotta do is look at their fundraising for the new addition to the community center. They're really standing behind it. They believe in what they're doing. And the common word here is recreation. It doesn't matter whether it's tiddlywinks or whatever it is, it comes under recreation, and this recreation board will look after it.
I do have Councillor on, but I'm going to go to the CAO first. I think he had a comment to respond.
I just wanted to comment, kind of following along what I think you were all saying. And it's a perfectly good example. The Brussels Management Committee, there were probably only about 4 people, including 2 of our councillors, that actually sit in that committee. But when you actually look at who the volunteers that got involved in that community, who didn't sit in that committee, but they just simply get involved in the community, I don't think, Councillor Chartrand, that's going to be any different for Vanastra. You're still going to have a lot of your community people that are going to be involved with that recreation center. And I don't think by taking away the management committee is going to change that. I think you're going to still have that vibrant activeness that you see in Vanastra, regardless of whether there was a specific Vanastra recreation committee or a holistic one. Just a comment.
Councillor On.
Yeah, this is about consistency, and for a long time, our municipality has had all sorts of different separate things going on, and we haven't been consistent in all of our things that the municipality is trying to put together, so that we're the same. So by separating one of these things out, it's just again telling people that we're paying special attention to something else. So why would we not just put them all together, have the consistency of the same programming throughout? And I'm sure the woman at Van Astra would be a great asset to have. Absolutely, for sure. But this is about the organization of the municipal services that we are trying to give to our constituents. We are trying to make sure that they are consistent across the board.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just comments similar to last week's comment. I still don't see the synergies between the arenas and Van Astra Pool. I do agree with Mr. McRoberts that we look at this committee as more than just recreation. They're not more than just athletics. It's got to be recreation, social, cultural, and athletics. And that's something I've tried for years to have happen in Seaforth, and it never has. And that's going to be a definite plus if the committee can carry it off. But I'm very concerned about having 11 people on the committee, 1 staff person and 3 arena managers at a meeting, and you got 15 people trying to accomplish something in 2 hours. I just don't see it happening. I'd like to see a smaller committee, and I'm not sure about Van Astra being involved with it. Thank you.
Okay. Any final comments before we go to the motion? Councillor On?
Yeah, just in the terms of the size of the committee, council has how many members?
Too many.
We get through everything in 2 hours. It's and I agree, it is a lot to get through, but so you streamline it. So the managers all send in their reports beforehand, so that everyone can look over the reports and they just answer questions. There's easy ways to efficiently run a meeting with that many people. And I think we do that every other week. So I don't think that's a valid point in terms of the recreation, in terms of that committee, especially because we do have to have everybody represented on that committee. So it is going to be a large committee no matter what we do.
Councillor Deal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I understand where it's going. The number of people, again, would be my concern. It's just breaking down each of those separate entities and like what little bits that needs to be discussed for each of those entities. Will that not drag out those meetings if there's issues to be had? That would be my concern with so many people on the on that board. Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. CAO.
Yeah, I think Councillor On had the right point that we streamline the process, and certainly I got to say, I've been at all these meetings in the last 8 months for all the centers, and I got to say, they're tops probably an hour at most in the duration, and quite frankly, there's synergies between the conversations and discussions anyway, because I'm going to 3 different committees and telling them COVID updates, which is part of that hour time, whereas I could do it once instead of doing it 3 times. So, I mean, I think there's a lot of synergies that we could have in terms of the process. So I don't think 11 people's ridiculous. I think it's what it is to be representative and provide a good balance of the representation from our partner municipalities, our council members, as well as having some public members as part of that group. So it might seem cumbersome, but at the end of the day, there'll be agenda focused. People can't can't throw something up at the meeting. It'll have to be focused on the agenda. And as long as people identify things for the agenda for conversations, 11 people is no problem. We're doing it now. I mean, it's a valid point. You know, council's 11 people. We have very productive discussions and debates with 11 people, and we have a lot longer agendas that we get through than we probably ever would with the Recreation Committee.
Councillor Chartrand.
Yes, thank you. So listening to your strategy, Brad, I would assume then you wouldn't be talking about their month-to-month budgets and where they're at and what their issues are.
That would be part of the manager's reports that would be provided, but and certainly as part of those updates. And yes, we would still provide financial reports in terms of how we're progressing. They'll be part of each of those reports. But again, we're doing this quarterly. We're not doing it monthly. You know, so there'll actually be good information coming out of those financial reports on a quarterly basis, because when you're looking at a quarter to a second quarter, you can actually see some physical change. You can see what's happening from a trend process. It's not those committees' responsibility to be managing the finances of those various things. They can take pride in the fact that they've raised more revenue or maybe found opportunities to save cost. But at the end of the day, it's my responsibility and my manager's responsibility is to make sure that those centers operate according to their budget and develop program. What I'm really trying to look here is from a committee standpoint is let's not just focus on center specific recreation. Let's look at that, but let's look at opportunities to expand our recreation programs throughout here in East, because you know we've got a lot of recreation opportunities out there. I mean, a splash pad, going back to our delegation earlier, that's a recreation opportunity, and somehow we need to incorporate that into some type of a committee that can look at that and consider that. How does that fit into the process?
So then it's your responsibility then to hold each of the managers responsible for their budgets.
It's me to hold the manager responsible, but it's ultimately the manager's responsibility. Yes, ultimately I'm responsible, but it is, right? At the end of the day, I'm your employee. I'm the one who has to make sure that they're doing what they need to do.
Because I know from past experience that we'd go over the budgets, where they overspent, why, what can we do to help? We throw a lot of information in our meetings with the manager and share that responsibility together to try to come to, you know, so if it's your responsibility to hold them to their budget and their deficits every year, then we'll just come to you for that.
And certainly, you know, and I don't want to make it sound like, you know, that's not going to still happen. There's still an opportunity for that committee to offer suggestions to each of those managers in terms of challenges from a cost or a revenue standpoint. Absolutely. No different than what we're currently doing.
Thank you.
I just have one final comment to respond to Councillor Deal. I agree with your concern about when you first set up a group that large, because I can tell you I would not be a good person to try and put that agenda together or try and run an organized meeting. But I can tell you that if I went to a couple meetings, I would know for sure and would quickly speak up about something that I thought was not being very efficient or good for the group to accomplish things. So I suspect that by the time they've got a year under their belt, they'll will have seen something and they'll certainly have worked their bugs out, and hopefully everybody is working well together. Councillor Steffler, I'll give you the last say before we go to the vote.
Well, all of us going to say, who is ever on this committee, they have an obligation to speak up if there's a problem.
Yes, I agree. Okay, just in the essence of time and my own voice, does council need me to read the actual motion that is listed in the agenda, or will you accept just the motion as printed as the comment? If you want me to read it, you have to speak up. Okay, can I get a mover and a seconder for it? Moved by Councillor McClellan, second by Councillor Steffler, that the motion is that the council municipality of Huron East adopt the following committee council structure that would be effective for the 2022 to 2026 term of council, and that those changes are listed in the agenda. All those in favor of the motion? And motion carries. Thank you.
The count, please, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I believe it was 8. No, sorry, 9 to 2.
Thank you.
8.4, the Yunt Kent line. I get a mover and a seconder, and then I only have one question on this. Moved by Councillor Morrison, second by Councillor McClellan, that the Council of the Municipality of Huron East supports staff's recommendation to install a guardrail across the end of the road to block vehicle access, install a dead end warning sign, and designate a limited area around Yunt driveway and West Farm access lane as no parking and sign it accordingly. I read the report and I was really happy to hear that our staff worked with the Yunt family and they've come to a solution that both seem to be happy with. And I guess my question will be for Barry on this one. Barry, the only thing that I guess question that didn't seem to get addressed, and maybe it's not a big deal, but it was talked about in one of the staff reports that sometimes in the winter you do use that area to push snow as a convenience when cleaning the roads. And my only question was, once you put the guardrail up, I take it that takes that opportunity away from staff?
Well, Mr. Mayor, actually, there's another street allowance that runs, I do believe, to the west. And I think we'll still be able to do the street clearing in the same fashion. Actually, the guardrail and the dead end thing, being that it was never a road that was developed before other than basically a glorified laneway to the Yunt property, didn't have proper, what would you say, a barrier at the end or the proper signage and stuff. It was just more or less your take for granted type of use. Now that it's being developed, we take the approach to make the appropriate barricades and delineation at the end of the road.
Okay, thank you for that response. And again, really happy to hear that both Public Works and the Yunt family seem to be happy with the arrangement that's being made. Any other comments of council at this time? All those in favor? Carried. Bob, I saw your hand. Were you going to ask a question?
A quick question, if I may, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah. I
thought when this initially came to us that their concern was people walking back and forth, not vehicles so much. And I don't see how a guardrail will stop pedestrian trespassing for them. Was that discussed with the Younts, Mr. McRoberts, please?
Certainly, I reached out to the Yunt family to see if there were anything beyond what we recommended here that they would be interested in, and they expressed that they were satisfied with what we were proposing and more and comfortable with it. So there wasn't any further conversation about trespassing. I think there are other issues where people parking, blocking their laneway to the access to their farmlands. So we've tried to address that, and I think the barrier there just sort of makes it clear that it's, it's not a thoroughfare through there.
Thank you.
Okay. I've already read the motion. Jessica, I'm sorry, did I have a mover and a seconder? I did. Okay. All those in favor? And motion carries. Thank you. 8.5, council format.
So I'll just go through it quickly. It's just basically, I'm kind of recommending that we kind of just keep playing a wait and see approach to council in-person meetings. There are certainly some cases of COVID ramping up, or we'll call it the sixth wave, if that's the preferred term, and different variants of the virus coming. And council's aware of the fact that, if it's just 11 of us sitting in that room and staff, it's not a problem. It's when we get public in there, and particularly if we have a large public meeting, like say when we did the subdivision at the Seaforth Public School, we just don't have the space to be able to kind of keep separation. I don't think it works great for having counselors wearing masks during a council meeting. So I'm still kind of taking that wait and see approach. And what I'm recommending here is that we just review it automatically at the second meeting of every, and then council can make a decision. It'll just be an agenda item for every council meeting going forward until such time we decide to move in person. And a month might be all it needs to be. A month might make a difference in terms of where we're at now, what the case might be.
Okay. Can I get a mover and a seconder for that, please? Moved by Councillor Chartrand, second by Councillor Morrison, that the Council of the Municipality of Huron East continue to meet virtually and revisit the return to in-person meeting at each of the second council meetings of the month. All those in favor? And motion carries. Thank you. 8.6 procedural bylaw amendment. Welcome, Jessica.
Hi, I'm not really too much to say. I was just going through the bylaw, and being with the new term commencement date with the Municipal Elections Act being November 15th. I think we've mentioned in previous meetings or reports that we'd kind of like to hold December as some budget dates, our council council orientation dates in December, to get things kind of moving as fast as we can with the new term of council. Right now, the procedural bylaw does state that we should hold the inaugural meeting on the first Tuesday in December. So to kind of just move everything up, I just wanted to revise the wording. It gives us more flexibility in the future too, in case these municipal act changes happen again. It's just so that we can set the date as myself or with council to make it more user friendly and accommodating to everybody.
Okay, and that makes sense. And is this year's election not earlier than it normally is?
The nomination period is longer than normally is. And yeah, so usually it's December that council would meet, and I think it's usually mid-December that council commences, but yeah, it's moved up about a month for the new commencement date. And it will go till November in 2026 as well. So it's same time frame, just pushed up a month in general.
Okay, all right, thank you. Mover and a seconder for 8.6. Moved by Councillor Chartrand, second by Councillor Wilby, that the Council of the Municipality of Huron East consider an amendment to the procedural bylaw 43-2015 to change the prescribed council inaugural meeting date, section 5.2, subsection A. All those in favor? And motion carries. Mackenzie Municipal Drain.
So this was a file that was left for me when I started. So I've reviewed the file, and it was kind of left up that council left it that the landowners would meet and discuss what they wanted to do with it. I've been in discussions with our engineer, Ed DeLay. He's in the meeting tonight too. So if you have any more technical questions or background that I may not be able to answer, he's here to help us. Ed DeLay has met with the landowners. I outlined the timeline in the report as well. And he suggested that we proceed with writing a section 40 report under the Drainage Act. So this would leave Ed DeLay to write the drainage report. The section 40 report. It would be assessed again, and then Ed would be responsible for kind of closing off that file. It would close the file on our end. I believe it's been open since 2018, if I'm thinking on the top of my head. It could even be earlier than that. So it has been sitting kind of on our table for a few years now. And I believe the original requester isn't involved anymore. So now it's kind of back in the landowner's responsibilities. So any further questions, I can try and answer them, or we have Ed here that can answer them as well.
All right, and I'm not sure who to go to first. And unfortunately, I do remember a bit of the story behind this. But even when I was reading the report, and I know it kept saying in there that there was a maximum amount that the municipality would end up being responsible for, but the municipality has spent a lot more than that at this point. So does that mean, Ed, that by you writing this report, that gives us the opportunity to then collect those extra funds from the individual landowners so that the municipality gets back to the initial figure of what we were expecting to be our responsibility?
Sure. Yeah, I'll go ahead and answer that, Mr. Mayor. So essentially, at this point, it was started, as Jessica said, under Section 78 of the Drainage Act. So it's an improvement to municipal drain. And I think everyone, most everyone here will know the story of what happened. The original requester upset everyone in the watershed, let's say, and we had a meeting with a lot of them, and he never actually came to those meetings. And then we kind of came up with a plan, and no one was too keen to proceed with that. But they did agree there are issues in the watershed. They're going to actually try to resolve those privately. Everyone got along quite well. It was just kind of two parties. The requester did not get along with everyone else, as you're no doubt aware. So the requester then pulled his support for the project, and everyone else. I don't think that was to try to put costs to anyone else, but Section 78 is very specific, let's say, about how to deal with those costs. And that's why I'm suggesting the Section 40. So Section 40 gives us a little more power to then, or gives me power to then say who will pay the remaining costs, because the costs to date, I think, are $42,000. There have been meetings, there have been, time has gone on. So that's what we have billed to date. That was mainly for work expecting to go to a final report. And so at this point, I would then look at the watershed. What have we done? Who have we dealt with the most, maybe? But anyway, we'll have a look at it and who should pay those costs. That's what the Section 40 report does. So it's basically a letter report, so 2 pages essentially. We'll likely have a small plan attached to it, and I would file that with you. And the procedure is not like the normal one. It's rather quick. So it's really kind of, I don't want to describe it as a loophole, but I will. It's an easy way out in the process so that you don't have to go all the way to the final report to end it. I hope that makes sense. So to answer your question, yes, the total cost that wouldn't exist, that wouldn't exceed $6,370, I think is the number. That I think was taken from the assessment schedules we would have been preparing for the meetings. So I'd say that doesn't really apply anymore. I don't think the municipality's cost is going to be that great because there are a couple roads in the watershed, but that's about it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Chartrand, you had your hand up.
He's already answered my question. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to Ed. So Ed, this Section 40, we're only trying to recoup money at this point here then. So what happens if, I should go back. So they decided not to do anything with the drain at all. Even the gentleman that pulled his name out, the other two, they decided not to as well then.
Yes, yeah, I've spoken to the major, let's say the one who's everyone's drains runs through his property, Darren McKenzie. He's going to address some other issues he was having that got brought up through this privately.
Yeah. Okay. So there's no chance in if they catch wind, or they're going to get a bill in the mail for what's been done to this point here. What if they come back to us and say, okay, we want to go ahead with this before we pay this bill?
Well, that wouldn't be the first time that's happened, unfortunately. But I have calls into a few of the other landowners. I haven't heard back from them, but Darren was the one I was most in charge with. So I know he talks to his neighbors. Luckily, the costs we're adding with this, it's not significant. This is meant to be kind of a quick turnaround. So if that does happen, it's not like we're going in the complete other direction.
Okay. No, all I was interested in was, and I think you touched on it, was the communications part of it, that this is what's going to happen. If anybody's going to spur into action, this might get it done. So thank you very much for your answer.
Thank you.
Okay, can I get a mover and a seconder for 8.7 then, please? Move it, Councillor McClellan. And
Bernie.
Oh yeah, go ahead, Larry.
Has Mr. Van Miltenberg been notified of all this? Because last I talked to him, I believe this is the drain he was talking about going hiring a lawyer to do some investigative stuff in this. Now, could I get an answer to that? Because I think that's, may as well use his name. That's the guy who's objecting the most.
Go ahead, Ed, if you have an answer.
Yeah, if I may, I believe we're talking about a different drain here. But
Yeah, sorry. It's for,
Oh, okay. I just didn't want, I get my drains mixed up. That's all. I didn't want this to sort of go on.
Oh, it's okay. If it is the Geiger drain I'm thinking of, we're heading to a tribunal on in September for Mr. Van Miltenberg.
Yeah, I already heard he was going further. I just wanted to make sure this wasn't the one. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. If I may interject,
yep,
Mr. Mayor. So really what I'm looking for tonight, as you're all no doubt aware, anyway, procedurally, this has to be my decision. I can't be influenced, etc. So I'm really looking for a support from council to proceed with the Section 40.
And that's exactly how Jessica has the motion worded.
Excellent.
And so moved by Councillor McClellan, and since Councillor McGrath spoke up, we'll give him the second. That the Council of the Municipality of Huron East is in support of RJ Burnside Engineering Limited to proceed with the writing of a Section 40 report under the Drainage Act in respect to the Mackenzie Municipal Drain. Any final comments or questions? All those in favor? And motion carries. Thank you. Motion to receive the CAO and clerk's reports. Moved by Councillor Chartrand, second by Councillor Steffler, that Huron East Council received the following reports of municipal officers as presented, one from the CAO and two from the clerk, and all those in favor. And motion carries. And I'll turn correspondence over to the CAO.
Bernie?
Oh, sorry. Yes, Joe.
I had my hand up to declare the conflict of interest on 9.1.
Okay, thank you
for that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So we have a request from the Seaforth Golf Course to match a donation of last year of $2,000 to the Seaforth Country Classic for the 2022 package. So that came to me. I directed that request to council to see whether there was support from council to donate $2,000.
I'm going to say there's two benefits to this donation. One, it's certainly supporting a local business that has brought a lot of brand recognition of Huron East to the country. And two, it is a local charity that has certainly brought a lot of recognition to our area also. So go ahead, Councillor Chartrand.
Yes, being on the past economical development committees, Jan always had this item as a line item in her economic development budget. Don't know if that was still left in, because I know, Brad, you kept her kind of at least half of her budget, but that's where that $2,000 used to come from.
Okay, and that's good information, but at this point, since we're not actually using the economic development budget, this would be a donation from the Council of Huron East. So if we are to proceed, I do need a mover and a seconder before we take a vote. Moved by Councillor Chartrand, second by Councillor Wilby, that we donate the matching $2,000 to the Seaforth Country Classic, who is also, of course, making donations to the Tanner Steffler Foundation.
Actually, sorry, Mr. Mayor, it's the Huron Hospice this year.
Oh, that's right. Sorry, it was Tanner Steffler last year. Right. Any final questions about the donation? Go ahead, Councillor Ron.
Sorry, and I maybe just don't know the answer to this question, but I know that we make all of our nonprofits put in their financials in order to give them donations at a certain point in the year. How is this different?
That's a very good question. And I'm not sure I have an answer. In fact, I know I don't have the answer.
I don't think it is different. So, I mean, because it's still a donation.
I guess the slight nuance, I guess I would say with this one is our nonprofits are looking for funding for their individual activities. So the entity themselves, this is specifically towards I guess I would call it a private entity that's raising funds for a public entity, which is the
Right.
Huron Hospice. A little bit of a nuance. I know what you mean, Councillor Ram, but
So then my question is, what is stopping a ton of other places asking us for the same thing? I'm not saying that I don't want to give money to any of these things, but there has to be some sort of line. And I think when we said that people need to put in their financials if they would like a donation, that was a great way to streamline that process. So I'm not trying to put a damper on this whatsoever. I'm just saying that in looking at it, it seems like we are favoring this. So, sorry.
No,
I'm all
I
for donating, but that's what it looks like. It looks like we are favoring this. So, and maybe that's the difference in why it was on in Jan's budget.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you at all. We are handling this different. And I don't want the line up at the door. I agree with that. I don't want to open a set of floodgates. I am going to argue one point in the fact that the money that we're giving, it is being asked just to match another donation, and it's not even being kept by the organization that's asking for it. They're just making a larger donation to something else in the county that serves the county. That doesn't mean it's right. I'm just making that as a very small distinction from this to other situations. But it's a very good point that you raise. And although they gave us a little bit of information, not financial statements by any stretch, but they did give us a little bit of information of things that they have done through this process. But if in fact the council does agree to do this, I think along with that, we should send a letter stating that if in fact they want to come back to us in the future, that we have a process and that we would just ask that they follow that process so that the council can be consistent. Go ahead, Councillor Ron.
The other thing that I would ask is that if this amount of money is in a different budget, I myself am uncomfortable as a council giving out, even just matching this amount of money. If it has already been put into a budget somewhere, I'd like it to be found. And can we use that money?
Okay, all right, that's fair. Councillor Deal.
Thank you. I was going to ask the same question, Councillor On. But yes, I do believe that Janice did support this through the Jan did support this through the economic development. And is there any way that we can use the economic development money? I'm assuming it's still set aside. Can we use some of it to donate for this particular one and then follow up with a letter telling them that they need to do as the others have done in the process?
Mr. CAO?
I can't remember the exact figure. I think 10,000 sounds to the right mark for me. We set aside in the economic development budget for the economic development officer when we hire one. And if we hire one, subsequent to our economic development strategic planning process. Yeah, I mean, that's potentially where that dollar sum came from. I don't know. I don't know where the money came from before, so I don't know what fund it came out of. But I agree with Councillor On, and I agree with the direction Council's taking, that in the future it should go through the process of your grant process that Council has established. It shouldn't be funded through a department budget. If it's a membership for some organization, that's fair if that's got a benefit to the municipality in terms of some type of knowledge, learning experience. But I think if there's a physical donations happening, they should be outside of any departmental budget and be open and transparent and upfront.
Right. Okay. So I guess, Brad, the fair question is then, since you had some money set aside, and I believe there would have been money even left over in last year's budget because of the untimely departing, is there $2,000 in that economic development budget that could be used for this this year?
There is.
Answer to that would be yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. I don't even know. No, we did not even ask for a mover or a seconder at any point. But if in fact council wanted to make a motion to grant this, then it sounds like we should stipulate that it comes from whatever monies are still in the economic development department. Councillor Deal.
I would make that motion.
Okay, thank you.
I'll
And second by Councillor Chartrand. And go ahead, Councillor Ron.
I just said I would second it with, again, the caveat that we do send a letter explaining what we do require of them for that type of donation.
Okay, all right. I think that's very appropriate. Any other comments or questions? All those in favor? And motion carries. Thank you. Nothing under unfinished. Municipal drains, notice of request for drain improvement. Barron Drain.
We just got this request shortly after we passed the other municipal drain improvement request last council meeting. So very similar to the other ones, we've requested that Dietrich Engineering prepare the report as they were the last ones to work on it. I believe it was last worked on in 1994 was the last report.
Okay, can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Deputy Mayor, second by Councillor McClellan, that the section 78 request for a municipal drain improvement request by Martha Murray, EPT Lot 8, WPT Lot 7, Concession 11, McKillop, Barron Municipal Drain be accepted, and that council instruct Dietrich Engineering Limited to prepare a report 30 days after notification to the conservation authorities. All those in favor? And motion carries. And down to council reports. Are there any council member reports at this time? Deputy Mayor. You're muted again, Bob.
Sorry about that. I'm not used to this. Sorry.
Okay.
C4 Centenaires and Brenda Campbell and her group with some funds from the BIA had a very, very successful Easter egg hunt on Saturday morning at the Seaforth Arena. They had they served well over 350 pancake breakfasts, and I don't know how many pounds of chocolate were dispensed, but I really would like to thank the Centenaires for giving back to the community, and Brenda and her group for all they did to bring it about after not having it for 2 years. It was very, very successful and very well received. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you for that update. Any other council member reports at this time? Okay, then I'll go back to the Deputy Mayor. Do you have anything about County Council, Bob?
A couple, yes. Justin, your questions about tweeting and texting about snow.
That was Councillor McClellan.
No, Justin brought it up and you presented it at county, and it's going to be discussed tomorrow.
Yeah,
If
maybe I'm wrong, Bob. I thought it was Alvin that brought it up. Go ahead, Justin.
Alvin originally brought it up, and then I sent an email later that night with extensive additional information that I thought might be helpful on the topic.
Councillor McClellan, my apologies. Councillor A. McClellan.
So actually, so both Bob and I, we put a motion on the floor that got accepted at County Council to bring back a report to look into this. And and staff did a good job because I read the report that we're discussing tomorrow. They contacted 3 different counties that actually have done this, Gray, Bruce, and Perth counties. All 3 of them do it different. And so staff are coming back that if in fact county council wants to go ahead with something, they are recommending, and I think it was I can't remember now, but I think it was the Gray model, what they called their 511 mapping or something like that. So it's a little more involved. It takes a little bit more to set it up as far as getting it going, but they said once it's set up, it's actually pretty much self-contained, doesn't take really any extra labor and stuff like that. So it's not really what Perth was doing. Not saying that anything that Perth was doing was wrong, but our staff felt that the one from Gray, I think, was a better system. So anyways, they've presented 3 examples to us, and county council will discuss it tomorrow. And then if they choose to accept one of them, we'll certainly bring that information back. Was there anything else from the county, Bob?
I found it, this is just an interesting little tidbit. Paint for the county roads.
Yeah.
Just blew my mind. They went with Lambton County and Middlesex County and Huron County and got a price. And for the next 2 years, we are only going to spend $769,000 painting our roads. So that just blew me away. I was totally aghast. And that's going on. I did appreciate the fact that 3 counties had worked together. I thought that was very good, but just the cost of operation sometimes amazes me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that update. Are there any other boards, committees, or meeting seminars that anybody wants to comment on? Go ahead, Councillor Ron.
So I went to that economic development seminar this morning that Brad was at. I don't remember the guy's name. What was the guy's name, Brad? He's very famous. And
Roger Brooks.
Roger Brooks.
Roger.
Yeah. Very compelling. The 2 hours went by very quickly. I would highly suggest, if anyone has the time, to see his presentation. He had some really great ideas. And I know that it was for all of Huron County, but in specifically for Brussels was one of the towns that he went through, and didn't have a lot of spectacular things to say about it in terms of economic development, but did have some good ideas. So inspiring for me in terms of trying to help the downtown core, definitely. And lots of great stuff coming out of him, but we are going to have to spend money to get the tourists here. So everybody get ready for that.
Okay, thank you for that update, Councillor Ron. Anybody else have anything under this category? I have one almost as a request, and I'm not putting this under notice of motions because there's no motion, but when I talked about this presentation that this engineer gave at the OGRA conference, I'd like to share some more of this information. And if we have an agenda some evening that is a little bit later, Mr. CAO, it probably wouldn't take any more than about 15 minutes. It might take a little bit more if Barry and I start to debate back and forth about the merits of some of these suggestions. But I'd like to share some of that information because I thought it was really intriguing. And I think there's some food for thought there. It's nothing that we would do tomorrow, but it's something that we should always take into consideration when we're doing new construction and things like that. So again, I don't want to take up everyone's time right now, but I'd love to share some of what I got out of that seminar. So if that could just hit an agenda at some point, I don't think I'll need a lot of notice. Are there any requests by members at this time? Seeing none, any notice of motions? Councillor Deal.
Yes, thank you. If I cut out, I apologize. My internet's not very good tonight. I would like to bring a motion forward for the next meeting to discuss the drainage superintendent procedures and communications with landowners.
Okay. I don't remember the process, but I think you, thank you for announcing it. And I think you just now contact Jessica and ask for the wording that you want on the motion, and then she will include it in the next package. So thank you for that. Are there any announcements by any members?
Sorry, you cut out, but I will contact Jessica.
Okay, all right, thank you. Are there any announcements by any members of council this evening? I have one then, and it also comes in the form of a request. I was invited on Saturday to Brussels, and I believe it's the Horticultural Society. They have a meeting on Saturday morning, and I think there's also a luncheon provided. Am I correct with the date here, Jessica?
Yes, I believe you are, Mayor McCullen. It's this coming weekend.
Okay, so I had agreed to go to this. I do believe I've attended this in the past. I have a little blip, and that is the driver that delivers a lot of our stuff all over North America is about to get married. And so sending him off on a week trip just before he gets married didn't seem like an appropriate idea. And since he's supposed to head to Florida on the weekend, I volunteered to take his spot. So I will not really be available on Saturday. So I'm wondering if one of the council members, or specifically even if one of the Brussels members, since you're in town anyways, would be available or would like to sit in for that. I see. Was that a thumbs up, Councillor Ron? I wasn't sure. Or Councillor Morrison, I don't care.
I'm a member of the Horticultural Society, so I can definitely go. Do you want me to bring greetings? Is that what you'd like me to do?
Absolutely. Would you please do that on behalf of the municipality?
Sure.
And please send my regrets. I had full intentions of going. Unfortunately, I wasn't real good at tracking other people's weddings, and so didn't realize that it was coming up right away.
Sure, that's on Saturday?
Yes.
Okay.
For you, Mayor. Yeah, Councillor On, I can send you some more details about that in the morning and give you some of the what was sent to Bernie originally.
Sure, that would be great. And I could always pull Councillor Morrison along with me, just so that he knows what he's supposed to do in those situations.
I think that'd be a great idea, since we've never seen him out of that blue chair, so it might be an opportunity for him to actually get out and meet the public. All right, thank you very much for that. We are down to information items. Is there anything that the CAO would like to point out?
We have the, I think it's the Seaforth Trust. That was correct. Yep, Seaforth Trust, and then we've got our administration committee meeting minutes to receive those. And then we have a recommendation coming out of the administration committee, and I think Chair Councilor McCullen may want to speak to council's direction in terms of the realtors.
Okay, so I'll get a mover and a seconder, and then I will turn it over to Councillor McCullen if he has any comments. Moved by Councillor Deal, second by Councillor Morrison, that the Council of the Municipality of Huron East approve the administration committees recommend that the Council of the Municipality of Huron East award the work of realtor services to Remax Reliable Realty, Inc. And Councillor McCullen, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, I don't think so. I think a lot of it is explained within the report that the CEO has presented. I thought we had pretty good thorough meeting. We went through each company in particular and broke that down in a scoring system. And at the end of the day, I think we came pretty close to being sort of in agreement with the one that that we did choose. There were some good points and bad points, but it was a good discussion all the way around. And in the end, as Bernie said, we picked Remax Reliable Real Estate or Realty Incorporated. It is a local company from Seaforth, so we feel they'll do a good job, and we have an option, going to present with an option for another, or up to 3 years, I think it is, Brad, to use their services in the future, with the vacant 14 acres possibly, or anything else we have within the municipality. So any questions, I would try to answer them. But other than that, I think looking forward to working with them and getting some lots sold.
Any comments from council members at this time? All those in favor? And motion carries. Thank you. Bylaws. Can I get a mover and a seconder to introduce?
Sorry,
Moved by
just,
the deputy.
sorry,
ahead,
through you, Mayor,
Deputy.
through you, Mayor McKellen, we just missed moving and seconding the actual minutes, the Seaforth Trust minutes and the administration minutes. We just dealt with the recommendation from the committee. So just
Okay.
one step above there.
Sorry about that.
Great,
Mover and a
thank you.
seconder. Deputy Mayor, Councillor Morrison, that the Huron East Council receive the following board and committee meeting minutes as submitted. The Huron East Seaforth Community Development Trust minutes, March 3rd of 2022, and the Huron East Administration Committee minutes, April 13th of 2022. All those in favor? And motion carries. Thank you. And so mover and a seconder to introduce the bylaws. Councillor Chartrand, Councillor Morrison, that be it hereby resolved that leave be given to introduce bylaws 29 to 32 for 2022. Bylaw 29, a bylaw to authorize a lease agreement with the Tanner Steffler Foundation. Bylaw 30, a bylaw to amend bylaw 43 of 2015, being the procedural bylaw. Bylaw 31, a bylaw for the 14th concession municipal drain. And bylaw 32, a bylaw to confirm council proceedings. All those in favor? And motion carries. Thank you. And a mover and a seconder for bylaw 29. Moved by Councillor Deal, second by Councillor Morrison, that be it hereby resolved that bylaw 29, a bylaw to authorize a lease agreement with the Tanner Steffler Foundation be given first, second, third, and final readings, signed by the mayor and the clerk, and the seal of the corporation be affixed thereto. All those in favor? And motion carries. Thank you. Mover and a seconder for bylaw 30. Councillor Morrison and Councillor On. That be it hereby resolved that bylaw 30, a bylaw to amend bylaw 43 of 2015, being the procedural bylaw, be given first, second, third, and final readings, signed by the mayor and the clerk, and the seal of the corporation be affixed thereto. All those in favor? And motion carries. And a mover and a seconder for bylaw 31. Councillor Steffler and Councillor Deal. That be it hereby resolved that bylaw 31, a bylaw for the 14th concession municipal drain, be given first, second, third, and final readings, signed by the mayor and the clerk, and the seal of the corporation be affixed thereto. All those in favor? And motion carries. And can I get a mover and a seconder to go into the closed session? Moved by the Deputy Mayor, second by Councillor Dalton, that Council of the Municipality of Huron East pursuant to Section 239, Paragraph 2 of the Municipal Act adjourn the regular meeting of Council at 9:24 p.m. to go into closed session to discuss the following. 17.1, adoption of the April 5th, 2022 closed session of council meeting minutes, and 17.2, 239, Paragraph 2, subsection B, personal matters about identifiable individuals regarding municipal employees. And that the CAO, Brad McRoberts, Public Works Manager, Barry Mills, and Clerk Jessica Rudy remain in the closed session. All those in favor? And motion carries. Thank you. Jessica, just let us know when you are ready to proceed.
Okay, you are good to go.